Ravenous is a horror western from 1999 directed by Antonia Bird.
Set in 1847 during the Mexican-American War, the film opens with Second Lieutenant John Boyd, who's being held as a hero for taking an enemy command post. He was only able to infiltrate it because he played dead while the rest of his unit was slaughtered. So, unsurprisingly, his superiors don't really look favourably on this, so reassign him to Fort Spencer, which is an outpost in California. And it's populated by an eclectic bunch of people, led by Colonel Hart. So not long after Boyd arrives, the frostbitten and exhausted Calhoun stumbles into the fort, and once he's recovered, he tells a grisly tale of the party that he was travelling with, and how they became lost and resorted to eating each other, through lack of food. But Colonel Hart immediately launches a search party to see if there's any survivors, and Calhoun tags along. But it soon becomes obvious that their new acquaintance might not quite be who or what he says he is.
Grisly.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ravenous. So we're kind of disappearing back into the 90s again with this, well, I wouldn't say classic, but it's cult classic. Well, I don't know if it's as popular as some other cult films that are out there, but I'm a big fan of this film. So obviously we're back now properly, because we had a bit of a break over January. We thought we'd have a little bit of a holiday. I had a proper holiday because my work closed down for a month, so that was nice. And it was just nice to kind of go away and have a breather. So yeah, we thought we'd start with this one because I think we both enjoy this one. It's a lot of fun. It's a very simple premise, this film.
Yeah.
There's not. I mean, there's quite a bit of dialogue, but the premise itself is very simple. Yet it's got a really great cast, lots of really great acting. I mean, Robert Carlyle is such a. I often find with Robert Carlyle, he's not someone who has a huge catalogue under his belt, but he's got some very memorable films. And I know he's done a lot of TV work as well. Obviously, Trainspotting and this and Full Monty, those. I mean, Trainspotting is probably his kind of breakout role, or Hamish Macbeth, if you from the UK, you may know that. But he's a really great. And watching this again, you're just like, wow, he's such a great actor. He's very, very clever in how he portrays this character. I mean, I think maybe we should start. So Antonia Bird was not the original director on this. She came in third, actually.
Third, yeah.
The original director was a man, and I may pronounce this wrong, was Milcho Manchevsky. And there were, I think, numerous production problems. And
I think there was a lot of studio interference.
Lots of studio interference and things like that. And he was kind of ousted, and someone else was then brought in who the cast and crew kind of mutinied against, I think. And then Carlyle suggested Antonia Bird, because he'd already worked with her a couple of times. She came in and, produced quite an interesting film. Obviously, I don't know how much was already shot. She did actually came out later and say, the original stuff was not the problems were not to be blamed on the original director.
No.
So I think she said some nice things about him. It's a really interesting film. I think it's grisly. It's just a lot of fun though.
Yeah.
I remember actually showing it to my brothers, and neither of them liked it, and I was so disappointed because I was like, oh, you're gonna love this film. And I didn't. I was so disappointed.
I mean, it's not a period drama. Obviously, despite being set in the past, it's quite contemporary. I think very early on, it's obvious that it's not going to be your sort of normal Western or traditional period drama. But no, it's just a lot of fun, and it doesn't waste any time getting on with the story.
No.
Everything's set up very quickly, and things keep moving at a good pace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the cast helped with that. I mean, you've got Guy Pearce. I guess it was probably. I mean, he LA Confidential had been before this, so he was quite a name at this point. Robert Carlyle obviously was quite a name here anyway, and probably around the world. Trainspotting was an international hit, and I mean, it's got the rest of the cast. It's got a really good. I mean, a lot of the cast, should we say, aren't in it for the whole film. They're all kind of, I suppose, good supporting cast. Lots of character actors going. I mean, Robert Carlyle himself, I think, is a kind of character performance.
Yeah.
And he really kind of gets into the part.
I mean, I think it sets up the characters really well because it doesn't give you a whole lot of backstory, but they're all very unique. It's kind of perfectly cast for the characters they're trying to portray, and every single one of them is very different. you've got the drunk, and you've got the young sort of peyote smoking guy, and you've got the hardcore soldier, and you kind of, it gives you enough so that you know the characters straight away, and they're all played so well that you feel like you get right into the story straight away with them. It doesn't waste time, or not waste time, but it doesn't have to spend too much time giving these characters a lot of backstory.
I think also what helped is the scenery in this film, and I didn't realise when I first watched it, and I only found out now because obviously I was researching it for this. So the film is set, I think it's set on the Sierra Nevada mountain range, which is around California. But the whole film was actually shot in Slovakia.
Yeah.
And it's like a perfect stand-in for, I mean, it just looks so like, I mean, I've never been to America, so I can't say for sure, but from all the films that I have seen that are set around those areas in America, a lot of Westerns, it looks perfect. And it's absolutely stunning when they go out into the countryside. I mean, obviously it's all set in, they start off, they're living in this kind of camp, in these trees all around them in this kind of big open field. And the set is incredible of the camp that they stay in. Obviously, it's during winter, and everything looks and feels... I mean, the film feels cold. Yeah. It's so like, you're shivering watching it. It looks really good, this film. It feels very authentic.
I mean, the only issue was they filmed all the interiors first, so on a set, I think which was in Czech Republic.
Right.
And of course, all where you can see through the windows, you can see snow, obviously, where they've put a painted background.
Yeah.
Then when they actually got to the locations,
right,
for all the location stuff, which they did second, there wasn't enough snow.
There wasn't enough snow, so it looks... okay.
There's actually a scene when they're walking through a wooded part where there's sort of little bits, little piles of snow in various places. Robert Carlyle actually steps on one, and you can see it's just a piece of material that they've obviously put on the floor because it moves as he steps on it.
Eagle eyes, you spot that. Yeah.
But I saw that, I thought, that didn't look like snow when he stepped on it, so I rewound it. I was like, oh, it's fake snow. But you can't tell until he steps on it.
No, exactly.
So how much of that they had to do, I don't know. But because there's quite a bit of snow around various places. So how much of that's real and how much wasn't, I don't know. But
it's really great countryside that they go into, and it's got some great set pieces, and it's exciting as well. There's a couple of moments that are quite nail biting. There's a few shocks here and there. There's a few moments that you don't expect. I mean, I think it helps with, I'm going to big Robert Carlyle up massively here because I think his performance is stunning. There's a really great... I think it's very subtle, his performance. He's kind of... I mean, he's a small guy, but his performance is quite, But there's lots of subtle things he does as an actor. There's a great scene where he's telling Guy Pearce this story, and Guy Pearce kind of turns around and says, yes, you've already told me this. And all Rob Carlyle then does, he just goes, he just does that, he just goes, as if to, because it's so subtle, it doesn't need to be there, but as an actor, he chose to put that in there, and it tells you so much about him. He's like, I know I've told you before, I don't care, I'm going to tell you it again. And he just carries on telling, it's just such a subtle moment, but I really enjoyed that from him. And there's a number of moments. There's a scene, and I won't say what's going on without giving it away. There's a scene later on that he's basically being accused of something, so he kind of has to prove himself. And so Guy Pearce has accused him of this thing, and the way he looks at him is such a knowing kind of, you know what's going through his head. He's such a clever actor. I mean, Robert Carlyle came from improv. That's where he started. He started working, treading the boards in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and he had an improv group, and so there's a lot of, I think there are improvisational moments within this film. A lot of the fights, I think some of the fight scenes are improvisational. That too, there were some wonderful fights here that really feel like fights. You can feel all the stabs and the crunches and the punches and it's a real kind of visceral, meaty film. This, I think that's why I really enjoy it. It feels very realistic. Along with some great performances from the whole cast, I mean, they're all famous names, but they're all kind of in the background. David Arquette, and Jeremy Davis, and Jeffrey Jones, and Neil McDonough, who I kind of only know from Band of Brothers. They're all well-known names, but they're kind of utilised more in the background, and then it's Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle's film. Obviously, this film is about cannibals. Which is an interesting one. There's not many films delve into.
Not anymore. I mean, back in the sort of 70s and 80s,
70s
there was
and
lots
80s,
of them.
of course there were, yeah. I mean,
Tripping over them, but these days, not so much.
yeah, and obviously, I mean, Alive is obviously a more realistic film about
yeah.
cannibalism.
They don't, I mean, they kind of, that was the last resort, wasn't it? Well, I suppose it is in this film, or allegedly, but no, it's a bit more, it's a slightly different situation in Alive, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was also thinking how kind of similar, it's slightly similar it is with vampirism films as well. In fact, there is a scene in here that reminded me of The Lost Boys, because Robert Carlyle is kind of talking about having someone else's blood running through your veins, which is a similar line that, I mean, this film's kind of, I found it not in visuals and tone, but I felt there are points here that are similar to Lost Boys. You know, in Lost Boys you've got Kiefer Sutherland, who's obviously the main vampire, and Jason Patric is the kind of the guy becoming the vampire, but he's resisting it. Whereas here you've got, you know, Robert Carlyle is the kind of cannibal who's kind of gaining the strength, and Guy Pearce is the one who's swapping over to that, but at the same time resisting it, much the same way Jason Patric. I think this and Lost Boys would make a good double bill.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps a little bit of Bone Tomahawk in there
as
well.
Well, if you like your cannibal westerns, then Bone Tomahawk. I mean, this isn't as horrific as Bone Tomahawk.
Not at all.
But,
no.
But yeah, sort of a similar kind of thing. I mean, the other thing I loved in this was the music.
Oh, yeah.
Which was just completely... it's not bizarre, but it's quite unexpected.
Absolutely,
And it's by Michael Nyman and Damon Albarn. And there's lots of sort of folk musicians and banjos and stuff in there with this sort of recurring little theme that runs throughout the film, which is just... I don't know. I think you'll either love it or you'll hate it.
Yeah, I find it kind of... I mean, I'm a big fan of Michael Nyman I mean, he's an amazing composer anyway. He's done a lot of the scores for Peter Greenaway, and just a really interesting musician. And I think this soundtrack's great because it's at times very eerie and very haunting, but it's also very mischievous and playful at times.
Kind of gives a sort of off-kilter sense to the film, which it absolutely suits it. I think if it just had a traditional score that sounded like, you know, everything else, it would change the film significantly. I think having this sort of odd little theme going on kind of gives it this sort of different tone, and
it drives the film along. It's always there. The music's always there, and it's always doing something. I was also reading there's lots of like chants that they use which are actually kind of under the soundtrack as well, not the music soundtrack, but the general soundtrack of the film. So there's lots of interesting things going there, which I think really help to drive the film. It never stops. There's never, I mean, there are quiet moments, but it's always going, this film, which I think helps. I mean,
as far as the chants go, I think Damon Albarn, he spoke with Joseph Running Fox, who plays George in the film, one of the Native Americans who's at the fort. He spoke to him about sort of, Native American singing and chanting, and he sort of recommended a guy who'd be able to do that, and he spoke to him and met him, and he recorded some chants and that's what ended up on the soundtrack. So a really interesting audio experience, shall we say.
Yeah, and also Damon Albarn is obviously from Blur, if you're not aware of that.
And he'd worked with Antonia Bird in the past because he was in Face.
Oh, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, which also has Robert Carlyle in it. So.
It does. Yeah,
I haven't watched that for years. I'd like to revisit that.
Windstone as well, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good film. I haven't seen it for a long time, but I remember it being quite. I mean, Antonia Bird is an interesting director. She came from TV. She did a lot of things like Casualty and EastEnders and stuff like that, and then she went over into film. And I know, as Face, Priest is another one she did. I think she had an experience in America that wasn't so good for her, as a lot of directors, they get kind of pulled over to kind of Hollywood and then have not very good experiences when Hollywood kind of put their foot down a little bit. But she very sadly died. She passed away in 2013, which was sad because she clearly, was an interesting talent, I think. Yeah. And and obviously this film, a lot of work had been done on it before she stepped in, so how much of it is her own? I mean, that's another thing that Robert Carlyle was saying about Antonia Bird, is that, she has a certain way of filming. And when she first came in, the first day she came in, she kind of went, action, and Robert Carlyle kind of went in to do it. And all the other American actors were like... and Robert Carlyle was like, they felt like they needed to be told what to do.
Oh, right.
Whereas because Robert Carlyle is improv... She was more like, just do do what you want. Trust me
Yeah.
that I'm happy for you to go out and do what you want. But they were like, I don't know what to do here. There's a wonderful scene the first time you see when Robert Carlyle comes into the camp, and going back to kind of the vampiric idea. There's also cannibalism and vampire films as well. A little bit close to the idea of Christ as well. That kind of drinking the blood. And there was a moment here where they're washing him in a bath, and there's a very quick scene, and his kind of arms are out, which almost makes him look kind of Christ-like, which I thought was interesting. There's some really interesting stuff going on in this film. The dialogue's great. There's a few phrases alluding to Benjamin Franklin and words that he said. I think there's lots to enjoy in here, and I really enjoyed it, because I haven't seen it for a while. I think I really enjoyed it a second time. But we've gone on for a while. Do we have it on DVD?
Yeah, I bought it on Region 1 many years ago. When
I've got the UK release.
So, I mean, it's actually on Disney Plus, because obviously it's a Fox movie. Well, it's on Disney Plus in the UK. I know in the States it's slightly different. I think it might be on Hulu. I think that's where Disney put their grown-up stuff now. I don't know. But in the UK it's on Disney Plus. I popped this in to watch the extras and discovered that it's non-anamorphic. So many years since I watched it that I'd forgotten that. So I was very disappointed in myself for buying that. I guess I bought it when I didn't have a widescreen TV, so it didn't make any difference. But there's 3 commentaries on there, deleted scenes with a commentary as well, and it's probably all the same stuff. So in the deleted scenes, there's not a huge amount, but Antonia Bird basically said that most of them were just cut for time, just to tighten it up, and or because they didn't really move the story along. So I mean, there was a couple that she regretted couldn't be in the movie, but for the most part, they just they're superfluous. I mean, I think there was a character, a sort of backstory building moment for Jeffrey Jones's character, which she was disappointed to lose. But she said his performance was so great that you didn't really need it. Like I said at the start, you kind of get the sense of all these characters just from the performances and the costumes and the way they, you get a sense of them without having to know their entire life story. Yeah,
and I think again, because it does move at a pace, this film, I think, stretching it out, maybe cracks would have started appearing a little bit. And the fact that it is just kind of, there's a lot crammed in to its running time, and it zips past. So I think kind of fleshing out more of the characters, maybe would have pulled it apart slightly.
Shout Factory released it in the US, but I mean, it could really do with a nice remaster. Absolutely, because it doesn't look great. Apparently the Blu-ray is not amazing, and the version on Disney Plus, it was okay, but because it's got so many amazing shots of mountains and trees and wilderness and stuff, it just looked a bit drab and soft, and it needed a bit of zhuzhing up, shall we say, to really make those vistas stand out. Whether that'll ever happen now it's owned by Disney, I don't think they're big on physical media anymore. So no, it's a shame, isn't it? Actually, because I agree. I think it's one of those films that could really do with a nice new version of it. And I mean, Robert Carlyle and Guy Pearce talk quite highly of it. I mean, there are older interviews on YouTube around the time it was made, but they both speak, I think, quite highly of the piece. Specifically Robert Carlyle, who seems to be having a whale of a time here. I think if you don't know it, I'm sure there are a number of people who know it. It's, like I said, it's not a classic film, but it's cult. I think it's cult status film. Maybe not as well known as some of the other cult films people know. I mean, even if you're a fan of Revenant, The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio film, there's plenty in here that will probably you'll enjoy if you're a fan of that film. I mean, there's possibly even a couple of things in here. There's a really great moment involving a cliff and an edge of a cliff, shall we say? But it's basically someone goes over this cliff, and the way it's shot is so exciting, which reminds me of some of the stuff that was being done in Revenant as well. There's some good stunts actually, because that was a real guy jumping off a real cliff. And then the roll, whenever stuntmen do the rolls down the hill stunt, it always looks painful. And they roll and roll and roll.
And like I said at the beginning, you feel every. I mean, he kind of it's not really a spoiler. He goes over the cliff and he goes through the trees, hits the ground, and carries on. I mean, they stretch it out somewhat. It's kind of like the end of the guy falling down the steps in The Exorcist. But you feel every time he hits the ground. It's oh my God. It's just, really, really gripping, great film. I absolutely recommend this one.
Definitely.
And that was Ravenous. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there, and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on social media, and join us again soon for another video.